I'll be with you in a moment in the county who could fix a movement this old place." He sat at his workbench, the delicate gears of a pocket watch splayed before him like the guts of a tiny brass bird. It was Valentine's Day, a date that the rest of the village celebrated with crimson ribbons and sugar-dusted pastries, but for Julian, it was merely the anniversary of a silence that had lasted 3 years. He picked up a jeweler's loupe, squinting at a hairspring that refused to coil correctly. "But can't I help you with something?" Messages into the dark to be a cruel sort of optimism. Why talk to the horizon when the horizon never answered back? She leaned against the counter, her expression softening into something wistful. "Because today is the festival, everyone is sending their thoughts out to sea. I realized that I didn't want to just send a piece of paper. I wanted to hear the heartbeat of something he loved again. It feels like a way to bring him back, even if it is just for a second, into something wistful. Because today is the festival, everyone is sending their thoughts out to sea. I realized that I didn't want to just send paper. I wanted to hear the heartbeat of something he loved again. It feels like a way to bring him back, even if it is just for a viewing. I'll be at the docks later, painting the lanterns. If you find a spare moment, you should come on the way of the carriers, born there are reasons carrier." She extended a hand, "Ben Clara their clan, belanging be 'em in a band. If you find a spare moment, you should come and I." Julian tried to return to his work, but the tiny pocket watch seemed insignificant compared to the heavy, silent weight of the chronometer. He began to disassemble the device, his movements methodical and practiced. He cleaned each gear with a fine brush, dipping them into a solution to strip away years of grime. "It sounds exactly like I remember. He used to keep it on his nightstand. I used to fall asleep to the sound when I was a little girl. It's a fine machine," Julian said, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. It just needed someone to remind it that it still had work to do. Clara looked at him then, her gaze searching and intense. "I think we all need that sometimes, Julian. A reminder that the world hasn't stopped, even if we have." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out 2 small slips of paper. "I have 2 lanterns. I was going to send one for my father and keep the other, but I think you should. You look like a man who has a message he's been holding on to for far too long." It was a simple, cream-colored rectangle waiting for ink. He hadn't written Elena's name in years. He hadn't even said it out loud more than a handful of times. To speak it was to acknowledge the void she had left behind. The prairie stays open late tonight, the sound of the ocean and the occasional distant laugh. Clara and Julian walked back toward the village, their footsteps synchronized on the cobblestones. "I think I started on the night of the lanterns," he said softly, neighbor. Clara became a frequent visitor, often bringing her easel to set up in the corner where the light was best. She painted the skeletons of old clocks, finding beauty in the rusted springs and jagged teeth of broken gears. Julian found himself looking forward to her arrival. He would save interesting parts for her to see, or tell her the history of the pieces that came across his bench. In return, she taught him how to see color in the shadows. He realized then that he had been living in a state of suspended animation, like a clock with a broken pendulum. He had been waiting for the past to return, instead of walking into the future. They sat on the floor by the fire laces. There were no grand declarations, just a series of small, quiet moments that built a bridge between them. A shared umbrella during a spring rain, a hand held while walking along the bluffs. The way Julian would bring Clara tea exactly the way she liked it without her having to ask. However, the shadow of loss still lingered. One evening, while they were cooking dinner at Clara's cottage, Julian found a photo of her father, tucked into a cookbook. He was a rugged man with the same spark of fire in his eyes that Clara possessed. The cliffs were covered in wildflowers, and the sea was a brilliant, shimmering sapphire. Julian and Clara spent their days working and their evenings exploring the hidden coves and secret paths of the coastline. One Saturday, Julian took Clara to a secluded beach that only the locals knew about. To get there, they had to scramble down a steep, rocky path, but the reward was a private stretch of white sand and crystal-clear water. "If we dangle my ten stand, cares giving tents to me," she said to the tire walls. "But 10 more by the time Sev has off to the Clonsacks. Their moms use I don't know. They stood there for a long time, watching the river of light flow into the sea, the ticking of the chronometer in the shop, the pulse in their veins, and the rhythm of the waves all seemed to beat in perfect unison. They were no longer just survivors of their own stories. They crossed the main square. Clara was at